What's up, you guys? Ricky Grimes, Horror Fiend TV, three corners of horror. Make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe. We would really appreciate you take this journey with us. We're back at it again. So, of course, we got the bronze body himself, JR. What's up, son?
What's up, man? You ready, man? Ready to do some carving today?
Absolutely, my friend. And, of course, we got Juan, a.k.a. Joe. What's up, Joe?
Hey, everybody. We're about to review one of my favorite horror movies of all time.
It's October. You know what that means. It's Halloween. So right now we're going to have a great time discussing this franchise. We're going to take a deep dive first with John Carpenter's original classic of Halloween. Now, Joe, what does this movie mean to you? And please discuss the impact that this had in horror cinema.
All right. So when I started this, I told you guys my first movie was Friday the 13th. However, Halloween is my definitive horror movie. It is actually, I have my number ones is Halloween and Exorcist. I can't put them apart. However, Halloween introduced you to the shape, as most fans know, Michael Myers. It was, for me, the real introduction to the slasher films. It created the final girl, Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis, the reigning queen of Scream Queens. And, you know, now there have been horror movies before this, but this, for me, introduced a killer and, you know, something for horror movie fans to be scared of.
All right, for me, I mean, it created the most iconic horror movie killer of all time. You had me growing up, you had Michael Myers, Jason, Freddy Krueger, Leatherface. But to this day, Michael Myers is the one that really has stood the test of time. Now, what this movie also did for us, it actually gave us a movie like soundtrack, like a sound associated with the presence of the killer. Not too many have done that before. So every time you hear the music, you know Michael Myers is around. And lo and behold, The Mask. Prior to that, we had a couple killers that, you know, you had Psychos. You had a couple of B movies with not too many killers that hide their face. This one you did, and it became an iconic symbol for, just be honest, for every single October from the 1970s till now.
The irony is the fact that they use a William Shatner mask. They just colored it completely white, you know, fixed up the hair a bit, and there you go.
Somebody got sent to find that mask.
Oh, the original?
He found the William Shatner mask. He brought it. I mean, it was the most random purchase made to create an iconic horror movie. I mean, like, it wasn't even planned out. It created an iconic horror movie mask on the most random purchase by somebody sent out to a store.
That's how it usually goes too. You know, nothing's really thought out, you know, thoroughly. JR, you mentioned the music really quickly to touch on it. This film was originally screened without that music, and it was bad. I mean, people weren't scared, they weren't feeling it. That's when they went back and said, we got to do something. And they don't really got time to do a lot of reshoots. So Carpenter came up with this score. And let me tell you, you said it. Anyone, even whether you're a fan of Michael Myers or Halloween in general, anyone listens to that, they know what that is. They know it's Halloween. Now, one of the other things that Halloween brings to us is the character of Dr. Loomis. Dr. Loomis has a particular relationship with Michael. JR, you know, why don't you give us what do you think about that relationship between Loomis and Michael?
Well, the ironic thing is Donald Pleasant wasn't the first choice to play the Dr. Loomis character. You had Christopher Lee, who was known for the Horror Hammer film series. He was actually approached for the role, and he declined it. Later on in his career, he said he rejected the fact that he declined that role. And then his co-star in the Hammer film series, Peter Cushing, who's best known as Admiral Tarkin from Star Wars, also was given the opportunity to play that role, and he declined it as well. So here comes Donald Pleasant, who, once again, this is something that Halloween did, is not only do we remember the Michael Myers character, we get brought into a third character that it goes across the Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode character, and Dr. Loomis, who he's synonymous with the movie. So he is the psychiatrist doctor to Michael Myers. He's the one that's been with Michael ever since he's been a child. He's the one who's been constantly warning people that the evil that's Michael Myers cannot escape and needs to be locked up for the rest of his life. That there's no such. It's not. He's not even a person anymore. He's it. He's evil personified.
The Shape.
Joe, tell us about The Shape.
Well, for me, so with Loomis and Michael, there were two relationships that were going on with both these characters. You know, there was the father and son relationship, because up until this point, you know, there was no action, like the way it was portrayed. Michael didn't have a good father figure. Loomis kind of came in there. And then coming from a therapist point of view, like this was a therapist trying to help a patient out. And, you know, Loomis put so much into his life to help try to reach Michael and help him out, you know, and then like this movie kind of deals with the failures that Loomis had in trying to get to Michael. And it weighed heavy on him as you watch the movie go on.
Yeah. I think the relationship between these two, it's iconic to say the least, you know, and the fact that they kept bringing Donald Pleasance back, you know, as the franchise, you know, progressed. That, I mean, look at that. I lost track.
For films.
I mean, he had a stroke at the end of one of those films as well, didn't he? Like, and he still brought his character back in the next movie.
Well, and I think he kind of felt the same way doing the Halloween movie, and I can't remember her name right now, but Carrie's mother. The actress who portrayed Carrie's mother in Carrie, she kind of thought this was going to be like silly, didn't realize the relevance that it was going to play. Donald Pleasance went in the same way that the actress who played Carrie's mother, and like, okay, this is, and he did not have any idea like the importance he was going to play to the entire thing, you know, because the character gets brought back in 2018. So yeah, Donald Pleasance had no idea where he was going to get elevated to as far as horror fans.
It's so good. I mean, one of my favorite moments in the film is with Loomis when he's like, the evil has gone. You know? It's so good. Like, Joe, like that's one of my favorite parts. Joe, what is one of your favorite moments in this film?
So I actually have two. Cinematography wise, one of my favorite scenes is obviously when Michael comes out from the background. When, you know, Laurie thinks she got away from him, and then in the shadows, he just comes out. For the first couple times I watched this movie, I was like, oh my God, you know, and now it's the whole, like, there it is moment for me. Like, you know, like there he is. And then this other part more involves on the work that Carpenter did on this, because so this movie was shot in Pasadena, California, where it had to be in Haddonfield, Illinois. Sounds corny, but he was so meticulous in the work that he put in that all those leaves that you see flying around to give you that sense of fall, the fall that Northeast knows, the Midwest knows, like those were cut out by hand. They were picked up every day and sprayed around. So the movie that one shot of Michael coming out, and just the work that John Carpenter did in creating like the whole feel of fall and Halloween, like those are my two favorite scenes. You know, him coming out and you seeing those leaves.
For me, the favorite scene I have in this movie is actually it talks more about the Michael Myers character. So you had a couple, Bob and Linda, who are in the middle of, you know, passionate, you know, sex. And Linda tells Bob afterwards, can you go down and get me a beer? So Bob goes down, grabs his beer.
Give me a beer.
Michael's in the house. And Michael picks him up and stabs him into the wall. Now, the reason this scene is so iconic is you had a killer who stood there, tilted his head, and just kept looking at what he did. Now, for me, watching it, you're like, all right, is he trying to understand what he did, or is he appreciating what he actually just finished doing? So afterwards, he goes upstairs, puts on a white sheet, and puts the guy's glasses on to portray a ghost. I'm thinking like, oh my God, this is funny, because she's like, oh, you see something you like, and then he proceeds to kill her. That scene for me was it was it was funny in a way because he actually put a ghost outfit on for Halloween. He dressed up twice, but the fact that it showed different aspects of the Michael Myers character, which I thought those two scenes were just amazing.
It actually showed the immaturity of Michael. That head nod was, I mean, it was, I like you said, it was when he looked at him, it was kind of like, there was it was a great scene, but you didn't know if he knew what he did or if he just realized what he did. That's the beautiful of that shot right there.
But that scene is, you time it, that scene lasts 3 to 4 seconds of him just going back and forth. And then it's just, he's looking up, it's an amazing shot. I mean, it's one of my all-time favorite scenes in the Halloween series.
I think Carpenter really did a really great job in this film with doing a lot with less. You know, he relied on sound and the visuals to tell his story. Even like when Laurie looks out the window in her classroom and she sees Michael, you know, and you don't got to really do no jump scares or no crazy music cues or nothing. Just look at that. Just that visual alone of Michael just standing there, just staring at her. Then he disappears in the next shot. And that it's memorable. That stuff stands out as well. Like I said before, with the music, where it just those little things just elevate this film to the next level. It's not the first slasher film. You know, obviously there was some, you know, a lot of Italian films in the 70s, but this is the first one that really took it and made it something where a lot of studios could make profit of it, as far as just making it something, oh, this is a little cult film. No, this could be a big franchise if done right. And now this is going to segue into the Rob Zombie film. Now, these are two totally different beasts here. As we just discussed how Carpenter did a little bit, you know, did a lot with a little. Rob Zombie took this in a different direction where he kind of gave us Michael Myers' entire backstory from a child. We got it from Michael's perspective this time, as opposed to getting it from, like, you know, Laurie. So, you know, what, JR, like Rob Zombie's Halloween, like, it's a polarizing film. A lot of people hate it. A lot of people love it. I tend to personally love it. There's no real middle ground with this film. Where do you stand?
I love the film because the first portion of the film dealt a lot with empathy. It's the first time we empathize with a child who had a crappy life. You kind of find out why he did what pushed him to do what he did. And that whole first portion of the movie is all about feeling bad for this child character. Now, even we introduced to an orderly in the hospital, Ismael Cruz, played by Danny Trejo, who immediately had a connection with. He took care of Michael. He devoted his whole job to take care of Michael. In his mind, he believed him and Michael had a connection. And even Loomis tried hard to be there for Michael to the point where eventually he had to, you know, give up. But for me, it was a lot of showing what made Michael become Michael and the empathy behind it, which, I mean, people are going to hate it because of that. But for me, I thought not only did it add to the Halloween lore, it made me want more, especially of the young Michael Myers character.
What do you think, Joe?
All right, well, the one thing I'm going to mention is that I love that Rob Zombie casted Danielle Harris as Annie. I mean, I know at this point we have eliminated the other ones, which my co-hosts are going to talk later. But as a horror movie fan, I love when you get these little small hints of a throwback. So Annie, Danielle Harris being cast as Annie, was amazing. He actually gave more depth to that character, who, you know, her death was kind of cheesy in the Halloween one. The other part I loved was the relationship between Michael and Loomis. Because as somebody who's going to school for psychiatry, I can kind of understand where you want to help somebody, and it showed the toll it took on Loomis to try to help Michael, for him to finally reach a point that there's nothing he can do. And it also showed that Michael's mother was still showing up to visit, you know, Michael. He wasn't left there alone. But for me, I just love that it showed what Loomis had kind of given up in his whole life to try to help Michael, for him to finally reach a point that there's nothing he can do, which just elevates the fact that some people are just crazy or psychotic enough that there's nothing you can do to help them at that point.
I love this film. I'm a big Rob Zombie fan. I think one of the things that people don't like about this movie is, it's a Rob Zombie film. He's got his wife in it. A lot of people have a problem with her being in every one of his movies, but a lot of pervasive language. What's that?
I love her. Cheryl Moon. Amazing.
Oh, she's great.
I thought you kids were all about team spirit. I mean, you ain't done fuck all to cheer me up since you got here.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that JR was talking about earlier, you mentioned how Michael had that relationship with Danny Trejo's character,
Yes.
and ultimately Michael turned on him and he killed him. Now, this is something that Michael always had in his character. I think it was Halloween 5 when the that vagabond rescues him, nurtures him back to life. Like a year he spent taking care of Michael.
Yeah.
And once Michael was okay, Michael kills the poor old guy and he bounces. So that's always been in his character. And one thing you mentioned, Danielle Harris, bringing her back. I think what I like about Rob Zombie and Carpenter is they always tend to use the same actors in all their films. Like Rob Zombie, if you look at all his films, there's at least 10 to 12 actors that show up in all his films. Carpenter, the same thing. He has his set pieces. So they're very similar film directors in a sense, but they totally have different styles. And I think if you're going to do a reimagining of Halloween, I don't want another John Carpenter like ripoff. I kind of respect the fact that he went in a totally different direction with this film. And I think, even all the characters he has in it popping in and out. You got Sid Haig in there. You got Ken Foree as, Big Joe Grizzly, where he gets the classic overalls from. No matter what character it is, no matter how small or minor the character is, there's a recognizable face on that character. So that, I know this guy, or this actor's awesome. Even if he's on screen for like a few seconds, you know who that actor is. So I love that about Rob Zombie's films. And Carpenter, to a sense, did that as well. Very loyal to his actors.
Look, brother. If you're looking for some kind of action, you better take it on the arches before I'm done dropping this load. Or you gonna be one sorry a-hole.
The differences, like Joe, what will you see? What would you say are the biggest differences between Rob Zombie's version and the original Carpenter classic?
Well, we're going to be reviewing 2018, which kind of takes place of what I'm going to say is that Carpenter's version, Laurie and Michael are no longer brother and sister. And in the Rob Zombie universe, Laurie and Michael are related. So the only really other thing I found is that Rob Zombie's was more visceral in the killing. Like in actually, like, poor Annie goes through hell in Rob Zombie's movies, and like the way that just any of his violence is done, Rob Zombie's is just a little bit more intensified, whereas Carpenter didn't rely on that. Carpenter kind of relied on helping your imagination create what is happening at that moment. So, Carpenter didn't have to use the gore to rely on the scare. For me, Zombie intensified it just to make Michael seem more of a scarier killer.
For me, there was a couple differences in this film, both of them. Now, if you go back to, unless Joe was talking about the, Rob Zombie's version of Michael Myers, which was done by Tyler Mane, he was more of a presence, whereas you had the original John Carpenter, Michael. I mean, his stature wasn't as massive as Tyler Mane was. I mean, Tyler Mane's Michael was just, you knew when to run. I mean, as soon as you saw him, just take off. And the other part is there's two scenes that I go back and forth on. Is in the original John Carpenter, Michael killed his older sister, went down the steps, held a knife. His parents come, and he's just standing there, mindless, like totally, like in a catatonic state. Now, if you take the Rob Zombie one, Michael went on a killing spree, starting with the bully, then went to the house, killed his mom's boyfriend, killed his sister's boyfriend, killed his sister, grabbed his sister, his baby sister, walks down the steps and sits on the steps to wait for his mother to get home. For me, that scene is so powerful because he is sitting there holding his sister, and he is so almost disconnected of what he just did that when his mother comes home, she sits down, what happened? And he's sitting there with a smile because in his mind, he was still an innocent child. So for me, that right there kind of set the ground for the rest of the movie. And that was the biggest two differences for me that really made the Rob Zombie one stand out a lot.
Now, one of my favorite moments in the Rob Zombie film was, in fact, when Michael goes back home, kills his stepfather, the great William Forsythe, and he kills the boyfriend, kills his sister, his older sister, which the fact that they use one of my most favorite songs of all time, Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper, when she has it on the headphones, man, geez, you don't understand how much that elevates the scene for me personally. But I think that right there really showed this is a Rob Zombie film. The way he uses actual music and the imagery he uses, a lot of that, crazy static camera movements. I loved it. That scene right there, I think, did a better job than the original did, because at least by the time you got to that point, you spent more time with Michael as a kid. It kind of built to that point. So I think that kind of separates the film for me. Now, in 2018, they kind of did something kind of crazy. They kind of retconned everything after Halloween 1. They're not related anymore. All that's out the window. They want a fresh start. Now, JR, I mean, I see your reaction over there, my friend. So what do you think of Halloween 2018?
All right. I know people are going to hate me for this, but this is what we do, why we do. So I really did not like that they wiped out everything. Don't get me wrong. A lot of Halloween movies weren't good after a certain point. Like for me, after 4, it kind of went down. Like I said, I enjoyed number 4. I really, and we'll talk about that later. I enjoyed number 4. And I felt like if you wanted to, because one of the things with the Halloween franchise do, they did have a continuous storyline going from the 1, 2, skip over 3, and then 4 and 5. Then after that, it tumbled down. So there was a continuing storyline there. Now, I felt like you could have continued that storyline and provided a better storyline plot for this film, because we're introduced to, Laurie right now, she's in hiding. She has this compound where she's preparing for Michael to come. She has a daughter who has a life, who has her own daughter, who she trained her to, get ready for this moment. And for me, I was very disconnected by that. I felt like there was no concrete foundation for that plot. I did like the older version of Michael Myers. I thought it was pretty cool. I hated the scene where they show him the mask and all the crazy people are screaming. It's just that made no sense to me whatsoever. But for me, I mean, you guys could come back to me. I would tell you what I would change to have made this a more stronger storyline for me as a Halloween fan.
Joey, what's good?
All right, look, I know that Halloween 2018 could probably be very decisive for the old school Halloween fans and for new school Halloween fans. I loved it. Honestly, it incorporated a lot of the stuff that's going on in recent films. This movie dealt with the mental effects of a traumatic moment that happened to you. This is what happened. So Laurie went through a horrible period, and she knows it's going to happen again. So when you watch this movie, the documentarian even says it. Who's the real monster here? Is it Michael, or is it Laurie, who has been locked away because of what happened in those moments? We talked about St. Maud as far as the theme in new horror movies being the mental effect. I have not been a fan of it. This movie, I'm okay with it, because this showed that the events that happened in 1978 were random. And this is her still dealing with that. I mean, she never got any closure on that moment. Nothing ever came from it. You know, like Michael got away. And even though we're not discussing part 2 and how he eventually becomes captured, you know, Michael got away. So this shows you what can happen, who is the real monster. And yes, Laurie eventually kind of becomes the monster herself because how she dealt and prepared. But we all watch these horror movies, and for like I said it before, horror movies are that's how I'm gonna get through some moments. So Laurie used what happened in 1978 for her to prepare for what she knew was going to happen again. So I actually loved it. Now, my only little small that I will say, but then looking back, is where you incorporate Rob Zombie, is that John Carpenter didn't need to use gore to deliver the killings, just the frightfulness of Michael Myers. Halloween 2018 incorporated Rob Zombie's visceral way of Michael Myers being a killer. So you got the combination of both those movies. And I mean, I loved it. I went in it. I'm a huge Halloween fan. And I loved the sequels, Jamie Lloyd, all those characters. But for me, I was okay where my brain had to go, okay, so it's Halloween and now Halloween 2018. I'm okay with that.
Oscar!
It's very rare some movies can introduce a first movie, give you a sequel to it, and make you eliminate everything else in between there that does it as well as this did. The only difference, like I said, between the two is the gore in between the new ones and the old ones. Carpenter did not need to rely on gore and just you seeing the actual killing. You saw it all in your head.
I don't mind the retcon. I kind of dig the fact that Laurie became this kind of doomsday prepper. You know, that was pretty cool. And seeing her with the long, white hair and stuff, I kind of dig that. This has one of my favorite scenes in the franchise, though, when that one long continuous shot of Michael going into the house, then we're seeing it from the outside of the house, and we're seeing it through the windows. Michael going in there and just, killing people and stuff. That was a great scene. But then there's also scenes where they felt like, been there, done that. Not, like when he kills the younger guy in the field. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of the ending either. Overall, I think I fall in the middle. I enjoy it. I'm glad they made the film. And I'm happy they're gonna keep, producing these films. There's, we'll get into that in a second. JR is ready to jump in there with something. Go for it.
This is where I would have changed the story, which I believe would have been a stronger movie. You had a disconnect between Laurie and her daughter. There was a lot of semi-animosity there.
Yes.
And for me, I was trying to understand what exactly that animosity was. Now, if you rewind it, if you want to talk about psychological trauma and how this would have boosted the movie, if you would have taken the Jamie character, who was abandoned by her mother, put in the basically a foster home, and went through the same thing her mother went through at an early age. Fast forward 30 years. Now you have a daughter who has not only the psychological trauma of remembering what Michael Myers did to her, came after her, but the fact that her mother abandoned her. Now this would increase the better storyline of the mother coming back to trying to protect her daughter, who she failed before, and knowing that Michael Myers is still out there. This is where I think if they would have experimented with that, it would have gave a better psychological storyline between the hunting, Michael Myers coming back, Jamie's connection to Michael, because she always had a connection with him, and then Laurie, the mother who was never there for the daughter, trying to make amends and save her daughter now. For me, that's where I think I would have changed the storyline. It probably would have been a stronger movie, but that's just me personally, because I kind of like the Jamie character, so I'm kind of defending Jamie on that one. So that's where I would change it.
So the thing is, though, Karen, Laurie's daughter, I love Judy Greer.
Yes, she was good.
And when you watch this movie, I was so annoyed because here's your mother who survived the shape, who survived Michael Myers, and you're not listening to her. And then you get to that scene at the end where she basically goes, kind of surprise. Her mother raised her and trained her to be ready for him. I kind of at that point was so annoyed with the character and then realized that Laurie did what she needed to do to raise her child to be prepared for Michael Myers.
Awesome. Both of you guys have valid points. JR doesn't like it. Joe loves it. And I'm in the middle. So like with that being said, JR, like where do you want personally the franchise to go from here on out?
I'll be honest. I think the franchise right now is in the crossroads. The Michael Myers character has been around for a long time, and this movie was looking to create a fresh start for it. However, like how many more can they go with the Laurie character, and is the Laurie character going to get killed off, and then he's going to go after? So it's now you're at the road. It's like, all right, what's Michael going to do next?
For me, I'm hoping that when we get to Halloween Ends, that's kind of where it ends. Let's just kind of give it a closure. I mean, if you're going to take it forward from here, you're going to start bringing into more supernatural stuff. So for me, kind of, I have a feeling that this is like the Laurie trilogy, or I guess quadrilogy. If you're going to tie in the original Halloween, I have a feeling that after this, maybe Laurie might get killed and we're continuing on with Allison. I prefer that come the end of this, that there's just an end. Either Laurie kills Michael, Michael kills Laurie, or they both kill each other. But I prefer that let's just kind of, if you're going to play off a classic, don't just continue on from there. Let's just wrap it up with Halloween Ends should mean Halloween Ends. And from there, that's it. We have our whole series of movies. We don't need any more from there.
I like the fact that Jamie Lee Curtis is kind of committed to these films. Like she's in it, like she's promoting it heavily. She's really involved with production. And the difference with this movie compared to the older sequels, even when they did Halloween 2018, they already had it in mind that it was going to be a trilogy of films. So they have a beginning, middle, and ending for Halloween Ends. So hopefully it's going to tie up nice at the end and not just spending more time retconning. If there's going to be another Michael Myers in the future, which, let's be honest, there is, it's going to probably be by another filmmaker that's going to be totally reimagined, just like Rob Zombie did. Now, with that being said, there's other films in the franchise too that deserves a kind of like an honorable mention as far as a little bit of discussion. One movie for me in particular is Halloween 3. I love this film. This film doesn't have Michael Myers at all. It wasn't intended to, because Halloween was always said to be every Halloween is a different story. But once fans saw there was no Michael, whoa, studios got scared now. So now they brought back Michael in 4, 5, 6, go on, so on and so forth. But Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, is, oh man, like this film is like, I hold this one dear to my heart, man. It's got Tom Atkins in it, one of my favorite actors. He's so good in this film. And the character of Cochran is interesting because the fact that we're dealing with warlocks essentially in this film is, and it's played kind of subtly, aside from killer bugs and robots and stuff like that, which this is why I love this film so much. It's so out there. I don't like at the end when the little laser show with all the lights and stuff like that. I don't like that. That kind of took me out of it. But other than that, though, this film here, it has the feel of Halloween. Like, and I love the fact that early on it's in the hospital, and you see the guy running there. He's being cared for, and then some guy just comes in a suit, nice, clean cut. It ain't Michael Myers. The guy sticks his 2 fingers in the guy's eye sockets and just like pulls his brain out from through his eyes essentially, and just cleans his hands, walks out, gets into his car, pours the gasoline, and blows himself up like nothing. There's no emotion. There's nothing, and it wasn't Michael. So a lot of people, they don't appreciate something like that because it ain't the guy, the cool guy with the mask. Nobody wants to see a guy in a suit that's got no charisma whatsoever. But the guy's a robot. I mean, come on, cut him some slack. But overall, I think this film is pretty cool. It's like I said, got Tom Atkins, and it's got that jingle that sticks with you, and the moment you hear it, you'll never forget it. And I love at the end of the film where it keeps playing over and over and over and over again. Essentially, the bad guys win in this film. I love that.
John Carpenter was trying to create an anthology. Each movie was supposed to be separate from the other one with maybe a little connection. However, all the movies were all supposed to be separate movies in their own, not entirely all connected by one character.
Well, speaking of characters, JR mentioned Danielle Harris's character, Jamie. She came in part 4, and she was in it, her character was in it for a few movies, but Danielle Harris herself was in it for the next 2 films. So Halloween 4, JR, tell us about this film quick. And what's the importance of this film within the franchise?
For me, this is if after Halloween 1 and 2, and then the Rob Zombie one, this one is up there as one of the better ones because they introduced the character Jamie, and Jamie was the daughter of Laurie Strode, and she was dealing with basically being abandoned by her mom. But immediately from the beginning of the movie, you knew she had that connection with Michael. There were certain scenes where she was scared of Halloween, so they decided to go trick-or-treating. She goes to the store. The first outfit she picks is the same outfit that Michael Myers wore when he killed. Lo and behold, Michael shows up behind her, puts a mask on. She gets scared, shattered glass. There was another scene where in the beginning where she's having nightmares that he's in the house. So you already have this little girl who has that connection to Michael. And as the movie goes forward, she's being hunted down by Michael. She always, even the scene where Michael gets hit by a truck, he lands on the floor, she goes to him. She touches him. She no matter what, she had the strong connection to him. And at the end of the movie, she circled back, became him again. She put the outfit on, stabbed her foster mom. Donald Pleasant, one of the greatest scenes, no, tries to shoot her and gets stopped.
He's so good.
For me, as much as I love the movie, I feel like they dropped the ball afterwards because they could have did a lot with the way that movie finished. You could actually have given Michael a break in part 5 to build on the Jamie character was going on with her, and then bring him back in. You could actually bring him back in the middle of the movie to try to finish where he started.
Listen, Jamie Lloyd was a great character. I actually loved Halloween 4 and 5. I'm hoping that the trend that the new Halloween movies are doing, that Danielle Harris is going to appear in Halloween Ends. If Danielle Harris does not appear in Halloween Ends, I'm actually going to be a little bit heartbroken.
It's a crime
because she would deserve to be, even if it's a small little character, she needs to be in that movie. For any Halloween fan, that would be when you're watching the movie for the first time and you see Danielle show up, you're going to be like, no!
Let me ask you guys a quick question. What if they would have did after 4, they would have had her step into his place for one movie? How would you guys have felt about that?
They kind of at the end of 4, I thought they were going in that direction. Yeah. But then she just became like a mute in some asylum, essentially.
Wasted her.
Yeah, that was a waste.
I know. Yeah. Love that as coming from somebody I've studied what the effects of trauma, family history can have on you. Jamie becoming the next, basically Michael Myers would have been great.
A fresh idea too. It could have.
It would have been.
Took the series further.
It would have been. That's what I'm saying. You don't know. I'm hoping Halloween Ends is going to be the end of it, but I just kind of have a feeling that the Allison character, if she's not going to be the victim in the next one, the Allison character is going to be the antagonist in the next ones.
But see, that goes back to not harping what I've been saying. Imagine if the Jamie character would have been in 2018 with everything she went through. It's plausible. It would have made a good movie. I know you love the actress, but I just feel like that would have taken the franchise to another level, bringing back Danielle Harris to play Jamie once again.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you for your input. This was an awesome conversation. Joe, why don't you tell us what we got cooking up next week?
All right, so join us next time. My co-host allowed me to pick one of my favorite movies out of the last 10 years. We're going to be reviewing Cabin in the Woods. If you have not seen it, please do watch it. Look for all the little Easter eggs in so many horror movies going back to the 70s up until that point that are in there. So join us until next time. I'm Joe.
JR.
Yo, I'm Ricky Grimes. Thank you for joining us. Like, subscribe, come back next week for more Horror Fiend TV, 3 Corners of Horror. Peace.
Dark masks, gather round your TV set, put on your masks, and watch. All witches, all skeletons, all jack-o'-lanterns.
The third
Gather
commercial,
round
it's
and
still on,
watch.
please.
Watch
Take off the
magic
third channel, the
pumpkin.
third channel, it's still running.
Watch.
Stop it, please, for God's sake, please stop it. There's no more time. You've got to, please, stop it now, turn it off. Turn it off. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.